Hello everyone, I'm the Saxy Gamer. Today we're here for yet another Civilization 6 Leader Spotlight, where today we are taking a look at one of the highly requested leaders, Wilfrid Laurier of Canada, also known as Canadia, as I like to call them. I know some of my Canadian viewers are probably going to get mad at the fact that I just called Canada Canadia, but oh well. So Wilfred's first ability is known as the Last Best West, and it makes it so that he is allowed to build farms on all of his tundra tiles, and then whenever he researches civil engineering, he is allowed to build them on tundra hills as well. In addition to this, he has reduced cost of purchasing snow hills, tundra hills, and tundra tiles by 50%, and he gets double strategic resource accumulation on all of those tiles as well. So the Last Best West is unfortunately an ability that I really wish that we saw more out of, because this is one of the things that kind of incentivizes Wilfred to play in the snow and the tundra, but unfortunately it doesn't really do enough to reward him for playing in snow and tundra. So the fact that you can build farms on tundra tiles is okay. The only issue is that tundra tiles by themselves do not have production yields on them. If you're playing someone like Peter, this isn't an issue because Peter gets production and faith from his tundra tiles just straight up by having them in his borders, but with Wilfred, you are really missing out on a lot of production by settling in tundra or snow, and in addition, to make use of that extra food, you actually have to build builders and construct the farms as well. So although the Last Best West tries to get him to play in tundra and snow, it doesn't really do a good job because the yields in tundra and snow are still just absolutely horrible. Snow tiles are still just totally yieldless, which really sucks, and you can't even put farms on them with Wilfred, so that sucks. The cheaper cost to purchase is okay. I don't think it's really all that great. It maybe can get you, a few more district spots earlier on or a few more resources earlier on, but overall I don't find it to be that impactful. And the double resource extraction rate, once again, I don't find that it's particularly useful just because it doesn't really fit into Wilfred's playstyle very well. He's very much not domination-y, so you really don't need that many strategic resources, and I guess you can sell them. But even so, a lot of the AI will not buy them for very much in return, so it doesn't do you much good. Later on in the game, whenever you start getting power, you can use it for that. You can build a lot more power plants and have resources to, kind of fill that resource need. But aside from that, I don't really find that much gain from these additional resources. So overall, for the Last Best West, it's an ability that I really wish did more, just because I like the idea of making Wilfred, play in the tundra and play in the snow, but unfortunately it just doesn't do enough to reward him for doing so. Wilfred's second ability is known as Four Faces of Peace, and it makes it so that he cannot declare war on city-states, nor can he declare surprise wars. The return for this is that surprise wars cannot be declared on him. In addition to this, for every 100 tourism per turn he also generates one diplomatic favor per turn. He also receives double diplomatic favor for successfully completing an emergency or scored competition. So, Four Faces of Peace is a mixed bag. Part of it's good, part of it's bad. We'll start with the bad part first, and that's that you cannot declare war on city-states, nor can you declare surprise wars. So, one of the most unfortunate things is the cannot declare war on city-states, because what ends up happening a lot of the time is that you'll be going through settling your cities early on, and you'll find a really good city spot, but there's already a city-state there. And normally this wouldn't be a problem because you can just kill the city-state and take the city anyways, so therefore you get that land. But as Canada, you have no option to do that. The only way that you can end up at war with a city-state is if someone else is suzerain of that city-state and you end up at war with them. So that's really your only option for taking city-states, and it can actually make it a bit of a pain because you really have to play around the city-state locations where they spawn, which is something that just kind of limits the locations of the cities that you can settle. Not having surprise wars declared on you is very nice though, and it's something that I didn't appreciate until after I stopped playing Canada. So as I've been going through with Gathering Storm, I've just been trying to get a win on deity with every single leader, and I played my game with Canada, and I was like, alright, whatever, I was kind of underwhelmed. And then I started playing as Eleanor, and it took me so many games to get a good game going as Eleanor, because I just kept getting surprise warred. And after, as that was going on, I was like, wow, I have new appreciation for Canada, because not having the threat of surprise war makes it so that you can play just a lot more relaxed, you can settle a little bit more aggressively, you don't really have to worry about building as many military units, and you can just be a lot more free with your game. So that is something that is very good with Four Faces of Peace. The other really good part is that for every 100 tourism per turn, you generate one diplomatic favor per turn. This is good, but it doesn't take effect into very late in the game whenever you start getting into the hundreds of tourism per turn. But once you reach that point, getting an additional, 8 or 9 diplomatic favor per turn can make a significant impact, and it can make it very easy to win diplomatic victory, or just go for anything you want in the World Congress. The double diplomatic favor from successfully completing an emergency or scored competition can be good. Normally this will get you like an extra 100 to 200 diplomatic favor per emergency or scored competition, provided that you get first, but once again, this is kind of a little bit more variable because you have to rely on emergencies and scored competitions actually being run, and you also have to be relying on the fact that that you're winning them, because if you're not winning them, then obviously you're not going to be getting very much bonus from this part of the ability, and it's not very good. But assuming that you're able to do well in the competitions, then this ability actually can give you quite a bit of extra favor from it. Moving on to Canada's unique unit, we have the Mountie, which is a special cavalry unit that is unlocked with the conservation technology. It doesn't replace anything, but I am going to compare it to the cavalry unit just because it is another very similar unit from a very similar era. So the Mountie has a melee strength of 60, which is 2 less than the cavalry. It has a movement of 5, which is the same as the cavalry, a maintenance cost of 3 gold per turn, which is 2 less than the cavalry, and a production cost of 400, which is 70 more than the cavalry. In addition to this, the Mountie will gain 5 combat strength if it is within 2 tiles of a national park, and it will gain 5 more if that national park is owned by Canada. The other thing that the Mountie can do that is very special is that it is able to designate national parks. It has 1 build charge, and it is able to designate a national park with this. So the Mountie, I think, is actually a pretty good unit, but not because of the fact that it's a military unit. I think that it's a good unit just because it allows you to go ahead and make national parks without having to worry about faith generation throughout the rest of the game. So one of the things that I forget a lot of the time to do whenever I'm playing a culture game is to actually build some holy sites to generate some faith, because later on in the game, if you want to build naturalists, they are quite expensive faith-wise, so you have to make sure that you're a bit proactive in generating faith per turn throughout the game. But with Canada, you don't really have to worry about that because you can just use the Mounties instead. So I found that what I was doing in my games is I was just going and I was purchasing Mounties with gold, and then I would just use them to designate a national park, and then I would just kind of have them sit around just in the event that I had to go to war with anybody. I didn't really use them aggressively just because Canada is definitely not a very aggressive civ because of the fact that they can't declare surprise war. And the Mountie stats are not bad. They're fairly cheap. You know, they have that lesser maintenance cost from the cavalry. They are more expensive production-wise, though, which is a little bit of an issue, so you can't build them quite as fast, but once again, you're not really pressured for time very much on Canada, so this additional production cost isn't that impactful. But the build charges for national parks are definitely something that are very nice. It allows you to get some extra tourism out by having the national parks, and you don't have to worry about faith throughout the rest of the games because you can just straight up buy them with gold because they are military units. So for those reasons, I think that the Mountie is actually fairly decent, and it does kind of fit into Canada's playstyle fairly well. Canada's unique tile improvement is known as the Ice Hockey Rink, and it unlocks with the Colonialism Civic. It will provide +1 amenity, +2 appeal to the surrounding tiles, +1 culture from each adjacent tundra or snow tile, +2 food and production with professional sports, +4 culture if adjacent to a stadium, and the catch to all of this is that you can only build 1 per city. So that was a real mouthful of stats, but let's go ahead and talk about the actual implication of the Ice Hockey Rink. So I think that the Ice Hockey Rink is actually a fairly decent tile improvement. The big thing that you get as a benefit from this is the +1 culture from each adjacent tundra or snow tile. So if assuming that you are actually being incentivized to settle in the tundra and snow, and that is what you choose to do, you can get a lot of +6 ice hockey rinks very easily, because generally the tundra and snow, they pretty consistently generate, so like you're not going to have tundra and snow dotted around, it's going to be consistent tundra and snow, so you'll have a lot of locations for +6 ice hockey rinks. So that is something I think is very good. If you are putting down a number of entertainment complexes, then you can build a number of stadiums as well, and you can turn those +6 ice hockey rinks into +10 ice hockey rinks, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's a lot of culture from some tile improvements. The drawbacks from the ice hockey rink are, for one, that the +2 appeal to surrounding tiles is good because you can use it to boost national parks, but this does make placing them a lot more difficult because you have to kind of weave them around where you plan on building the national parks before you actually build the national parks. So that is something that you just have to watch out for. The +2 appeal, though, can be very good because it can get you quite a bit of extra tourism from your national parks that, you know, you can make with your Mounties. The other really big drawback is that you can only build 1 per city. If you were able to build more than 1 per city, then I think that that would be a huge boost to Canada, because the ice hockey rink is a really good tile improvement, but you're very limited in how many you can put down, so you really can't utilize it quite as much as you would always like to. It's time to move on and talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of Wilfrid Laurier and the Canadians in Civilization 6. So for the first strength, one of the best things about Canada is that there is no fear of surprise wars when you're playing Canada. And I mentioned it before, but just having the ability to relax and not worry about immediately having somebody declare war on you is very nice, because you don't have to worry about building as many military units. You really don't have to worry about building that many walls. You can just kind of sit back, focus on infrastructure, focus on expansion, and allow that to be the big, just the big chunk of your game. And it's something that is very nice, and it's part of what allows Canada to not be, totally terrible, is the fact that you really don't have to worry for a large portion of the game. Later on in the game, when people start denouncing you, then you have to worry, because then they can declare formal war. But for whatever reason, the AI in the early game doesn't seem to want to declare formal wars, so you really don't have to worry about war at all until like the Renaissance or Industrial era of the game. One of the other big strengths of Canada is that they have very strong favor gain in the late game. As I mentioned before, whenever you're late in the game and you're getting, 700, 800, 900 tourism per turn, you can get a lot of extra diplomatic favor per turn from that, and this can really set you apart from a lot of the other leaders in the game. One of the things with Civ 6 right now is that very few leaders have bonuses to diplomatic favor, so they're all kind of decent, so any leader that has any bonus to it is immediately going to stand out. And the fact that Wilfred is able to get quite a big bonus to it makes him a very good diplomatic leader, and it is definitely one of his biggest strengths is his ability to gain all that diplomatic favor in the late game. As far as weaknesses for Wilfred go, there is one really, really big one, and one that kind of sucks, and that's that the tundra is still just not very good from a yield perspective. As I mentioned earlier, tundra tiles do not have any production on them by default, and someone like Peter has this mended because he straight up just gets production on his tundra tiles. Wilfred, however, does not, so your cities are going to be they're going to be struggling for production pretty hard. If you're lucky and you're able to get a lot of tundra hills, then this isn't too big of a deal, but a lot of the times you do have quite a bit of flat tundra, and cities in flat tundra just are not very good cities. It takes forever to build things in them, and that's just one of the biggest weaknesses of Wilfred, is that he's very much incentivized to settle in the tundra because, he gets these bonuses towards his resource accumulation in the tundra. He's able to build farms in tundra. He's able to purchase tundra tiles for cheaper. His ice hockey rink can only be placed in tundra or snow. So he has all these incentives to try to make him go and settle in tundra, but he really doesn't have very many incentives to actually make it better for him in the game, which makes it so that a lot of his cities just end up being kind of crap. So that is easily the biggest weakness of Wilfred, is that even though the game kind of pushes you to play in the tundra, it doesn't actually reward you for doing so very well. And now it is time to give Wilfred his tier ranking. So if you're new to the series, what I do is I give each leader a tier ranking in each of the 5 victory types, so domination, science, culture, religion, and diplomacy, and those rankings just kind of gauge how good the civilization is at attaining one of those victories. I'm going to give him an overall ranking as well, which just kind of takes into account all of those factors, as well as things like versatility and his spawn bias, to kind of just gauge how overall good he is as a leader and how well he stacks up against the other leaders in the game. All of our rankings go from S to F, with S being the highest and F being the worst. So without further ado, let's go ahead and rank Wilfred, and domination's up first, and this is an easy one because I think that he deserves a D in domination. He's definitely just not a very good domination civ. This is mainly just due to the fact that you don't really want to go ahead, or like whenever you're playing domination, surprise war can be very helpful because it allows you to get a very big jump on people, but as Wilfred, you just can't declare surprise wars, so that kind of is a big bummer to you. In addition to this, he really has not that many bonuses to make him a good domination leader. He has no bonuses to loyalty, he doesn't have very many ways to deal with war weariness, and his unique unit is very late in the game, and it's only really all that strong if it's around national parks, which is, very situational. So for all of those reasons combined, I think that Wilfred deserves a D in domination. In addition to this, he's just really not incentivized to play as a domination civ, so that just kind of hurts him even more. Science is up next, and I think he deserves a C. This one's pretty straightforward. He doesn't really have many bonuses towards science, doesn't really have any reason not to go for it, but just because of the fact that, you don't really have any reason to go for it, that kind of makes him just an average science leader, and thus he deserves the C. Culture's up next, and I think that Wilfred deserves a B in culture. He's a fairly decent culture leader. He doesn't really get many bonuses towards his culture yield until he hits Colonialism and he gets the Ice Hockey Rink. But the Ice Hockey Rink will give you a nice bit of extra culture, and the Mountie allows you to build quite a few more national parks, which get you a decent amount of extra tourism in the late game, which is something that is very helpful for culture victory. So for that reason, I think that he's slightly above average in culture, and thus deserves the B. Religion is up next, and I think that he deserves a C. Much like with science, he just really doesn't have anything going for him for religion. Doesn't have any particular incentives to go for religion. One of the nice things that you can do with religion with him is get the one pantheon that gives you extra holy site adjacency from tundra tiles, but really you could do that on any civ that you could just go settle in the tundra and get that pantheon on any civ. So Wilfred's not really special in that regard, so for those reasons I think that he is fairly average and just deserves the C in religion. Diplomatic victory is up next, and I definitely think that Wilfred deserves an S in diplomacy. As I mentioned before, there are very few civs that have bonuses towards diplomatic victory, so being any civ that has a bonus is going to set you pretty far apart from the rest. So the fact that Wilfred actually has a pretty strong diplomacy boost in his favor generation makes him a very strong diplomatic victory leader, and thus I think he deserves the S tier ranking. As far as his overall ranking, though, I think that he deserves a D. He's just not a very strong leader, and as you go throughout the game, you really just realize how little bonuses he has towards pretty much everything. You know, as I mentioned, he likes to settle in tundra, but he really doesn't get rewarded for settling in tundra very much, so that is a big pain with him. And as I was playing, I was just thinking to myself, you know, why don't I just go settle in grassland, or why don't I just go settle in the plains? Because I'm gonna do pretty much the same thing either way. The only thing I'm really missing out on is the ice hockey rink, and, you know, that's just kind of whatever. I'm only going to build like 4 or 5 anyways, so it's not going to be that much of a loss. So that is one of the things that really hurts Wilfred, is that, you know, his special playstyle that he's supposed to have, he isn't really even good at it, and it doesn't do very much, so that really sucks for him. He doesn't get any bonuses to culture, he doesn't really get any bonuses to tourism, he doesn't really get any bonuses to any other yields aside from diplomatic favor, so he's not very versatile, and he really just lacks the ability to catch up and keep up with leaders in other yields, so for that reason I think he deserves a D. Don't get me wrong, he's not a terrible civ, but I just don't think that overall he stacks up very well against the other leaders in the game. So thank you everyone for watching. I've been the Saxy Gamer. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you're looking for more Civilization 6 content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.